Okay, test, test. Hi, everyone. I'm Helena Hambrecht, co-founder and CEO of House. The best way I can sum up House is we wanted to create an alcohol brand that better suited the needs of millennials and Gen Z who were looking for transparency, authenticity, perhaps something lower ABV so that it's more in line with their lifestyles and why they're drinking in the first place. Long story short, the product that we created happens to be the one kind of liquor that you can sell direct to consumer on the internet. We built the first D2C liquor brand ever, and now we're launching in 24 states wholesale.
Hi everyone, Jenny Sun. I'm the president of Day Hair. We are a clean hair care brand currently sold through Day Hair as well as Sephora across North America and Canada. We're in about 530 stores and just really excited to be here to share some of my experiences.
Hi, I'm Greg Davidson, the CEO and co-founder of Lalo, and we make baby products that parents are proud to own. By designing products that really fit into each room in the home, we drive additional value by making the products have a lot of two-in-one functionality so they last a little bit longer than the rest.
Great, so I think there's two of the main reasons that I'm excited to be on stage with each of you today is that, well, one, you've all scaled these businesses successfully, but two, the timing of it, right? So at the start of 2020, we went through some uncertain times. I think we've heard that many times throughout. And each of you went through that and pivoted and got to where you are today. And now today, we're at a time where things are looking a little bit uncertain again. And I'm wondering if there's any learnings that you've taken maybe from the last 2 years or things that you've experienced throughout those times that you're thinking forward with where we are today. Who wants to jump in?
Sure, I'll go first. I think in 2020, things literally just like happened on a dime. It was like one day, everyone was flying high, and the next day, everything felt like the house was burning down. And I think for us, we were at such a different place. We were 5 full-time employees, but something that, and we were getting ready to scale, right? We were getting ready to grow our team, and a change we made really, really, really quickly was thinking about contractors and freelancers and how they actually become a permanent member of your team, opposed to carrying the additional overhead that bringing on additional full-time employees might have. And that's something that has really carried through our organization over the past, almost, I guess 2.5, 3 years now. We have contractors and freelancers in each department of our business, and actually their expertise and their outside perspective has really driven, I think, a lot of the creativity and just bring an additional layer of thought to the company that we didn't have before.
So there's a bit more flexibility with...
It's a ton more flexibility for us as a business, and if we do need a cut, if times do get tough, if sales aren't where we think they are, it just gives us a lot more optionality.
Nice.
Yeah, I think everyone has kind of gone through the same challenges when it comes to supply chain. So, I was actually not at Day Hair in 2020. I was on the private equity side, really doing diligence, looking at kind of M&A activities. And, spring of 2020, no deals. Everyone, a lot of the private equity firms were telling portfolio companies to cut back, kind of wait and see. And then fall of 2020, we saw kind of this influx of cash, right? There was a lot of buy side, sell side, and then now we're seeing kind of a recession. So kind of the up and down roller coaster. And what I've kind of seen the most successful companies do is really double down on kind of your core SKUs, right? So when you're really kind of thinking about your best customers, it's the 80-20 rule, right? It's like the Pareto principle, and it starts to look a lot like that from an inventory perspective as well. So no matter if you're going through a recession or the economy's booming, as long as you can double down and you know what your customers are looking for, that is really a key to success no matter what hard times it may provide. Like, you should know what your customers are looking for and be able to scale that way and just have that runway to be able to have the cash reserve to be able to buy into that inventory. So I think, we're seeing that across kind of the board, no matter what industry.
So no matter what the macro effects or distractions are going on, always make sure to know your customers and make sure you're answering your customers and you're on top of them and providing good value to your customers. Yep. Nice.
I can jump in. We launched in summer 2019, we launched a brand that was centered around gathering over a beverage, people getting together, making a big bet that people were drinking more in their homes. All that was well and good until 6 months later when there was a pandemic, which is a bit of a curveball for a brand centered around gathering. But that was our first lesson in understanding that curveballs sometimes can come in a form that you could have never predicted, ever. You can't prepare for everything. For us, we used it as an opportunity to observe and to understand how behavior was changing, not just in our prospective customer, but where people are buying, what people are caring about at the time. We were able to use those insights to put a lot of resources into digital growth, which is something that we hadn't actually done yet. And that worked out really well for us. We gained a ton of insights about our customer. We just really made the most of that time. And ironically, in the last year, all of us have seen iOS changes. That has made digital growth difficult. Us using that time during COVID allowed us to grow big enough that we could unlock wholesale. And for us, that was a very obvious shift for us once digital became more challenging and we had the opportunity to go wholesale because it's also a better channel economically for us as well. So I think the high level that we've continued to learn is these curveballs, you can't predict them. They're also quite universal. We're all suffering from them. And if you can just continue to make the most of the situation, but be adaptive to those changes, then you're in a good spot.
So always be listening to what's going on around you as well. Don't fight against these curveballs that come in and try to learn to adapt and pivot, right? Well, so that, again, brings us to where we are today. And as we know, we've seen consumer sentiment drop to the lowest rates in the last few months. Are we seeing changes across each of your brands? That's something else I like about this stage is that each of the brands are in different verticals and will have different kind of target audiences. How are they coping today?
Yeah, for us, I think we're a little bit sheltered from some of it. Even in 2020, our category remained pretty strong, regardless if it was the retailers and or online actually, exploded during that time. And so the way we think about it is when you're a scaling brand, obviously you have to be cognizant of outside factors. Do you have enough cash? Do you have enough runway to get through it? But it's actually your opportunity sometimes to step on the gas pedal because consumer sentiment, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, consumer sentiment usually is going to affect the brands that scale more. And you then have a pocket of attention that you can really then go out and grab. And that's exactly what happened in 2020. There was obviously an injection of money into obviously people's pockets, which aided a lot of that. But for us, and I still think when you are a growing brand, you have a unique opportunity to really actually push on the gas pedal instead of pushing on the brake.
And I think I, really agree with that. And, for us, for beauty, we're a pretty, recession, not proof, but resilient, category as a whole. So, in that we're very lucky. But, anytime we look at kind of a recession, the Great Recession, the dot-com boom, right? Shortly after that follows kind of this, time of great prosperity for a lot of investors, actually. So I think it's really kind of doubling down. And, these are the times where you'll maybe see CPMs come down because a lot of people are scaling back. So there are opportunities to really double down as long as you have a strong strategy. And again, use that data to be able to kind of inform where are we doubling down on. And, I think for us, that's, how we're looking at the future.
I agree with Greg and Jenny. It's a great time to be a smaller company. It's a good time to be nimble. Similarly with alcohol, people drink more during a recession. I don't know if that's a good thing, but it is a thing. I think for us, and we've talked about supply chain, I think there are certainly going to be customers that are less patient with brands. There might be brands that are less patient with customers. I don't know. I worked in the service industry for many years in the beginning of my career, and that was such a good lesson in just learning patience with people because you meet some great people, but you also get treated like crap for no particular reason. And just understanding that probably most people in this room just had the worst 2 years of their life, and so they might get mad over a certain thing, like an item arriving a little bit late in the mail, and you can either, get up in arms about it and feel animosity towards your customers, or just understand that patience goes a long way.
So if there is some opportunities then, whether that's people needing to drink more through their sadness or if their CPM's dropping. How do you act on those opportunities? Is there different ways that you manage your cash today to be able to double down on those opportunities than you would have, say, 6 months ago or a year ago?
Yeah, I don't know if it's different, but I think for us, we have pretty expensive products to buy, right? We're talking about high chairs, play tables. In many ways, I wish we were selling a hair care product on a day-to-day basis. But so for us, we've always had to think about how are we managing our cash incredibly efficiently, because the size of our POs and just the general amount we have to spend on them is a lot, and obviously the down payment we have to make. So debt and different types of financing vehicles have been a fixture in our business practically since we launched. Companies like Wayflyer now, I think, are in the optimal position, especially with the equity market getting a little bit thinner than it was, to really allow businesses to scale non-dilutive, but also to get through some of these tougher times. For us, it's been huge. I mean, I can think about in 2019, we were still thinking about, even when we had, when we did have cash, but we were thinking about how could we send a wire on a credit card just to extend the payment, and give us our net 30, net 60, net 90 terms that we wanted.
Yeah, and I think credit now is so important more than ever. And if you are a consumer business, it's a very cash-intensive business, as you guys know. And even as a beauty brand, our lead times used to be 16 weeks. Now we're looking at 30. So for a small scaling brand to be able to kind of withstand, let's say, 7 months worth of products across, let's say, you have 20 SKUs, it's quite a bit. And you have your safety stock. So you're really asking companies that usually would scale and use that money for marketing to say, hey, you have to put this in inventory. So I think just kind of being smart about how you leverage debt versus how you use your cash, knowing your customers, knowing your payback period to be able to really manage that cash flow. So even at early stages, I think like a 13-week cash flow forecast, that's not common for a younger brand, but something I really encourage a lot of people to do, which is get the business rigor that you would see maybe at a later stage and bring it early stage to really understand your cash needs. That way you can be smart about how much equity are you willing to really sell off, and what are you using for credit, and how are you really thinking about managing that P&L. So that's kind of what we're seeing.
For sure, I would say these kind of non-traditional lenders like Wayflyer that have come up in the last few years have just been a game changer for brands like ours. I mean, alcohol is not exactly a hot investment strategy with VC. And so we've had to rely on angels for the most part for funding, and thank God, again, for services like yours where we were able to, fund inventory without diluting ourselves. It was available to us much earlier than, say, a Silicon Valley Bank or a Dwight. It just opened up opportunities to brands like ours in a way that I don't think was even possible 5, 7, 8 years ago when VC was, all over D2C. So it was very good timing for you guys to exist.
Well, it's certainly a universal challenge that every brand has to face, and we're happy to be able to alleviate some of those issues. But things that we can't help are the macro environments like extended lead times. We can try to bring out new products and services, which we're working on at the moment, to help get a better understanding of your supply chain. But what are you guys doing today coming up to Q4? I mean, we're almost halfway through the year. I don't know how we've flown through 2022, but we are approaching Q4 now. We're approaching holiday. We are seeing extended lead times again. Seems like that's been the recurring theme for a while now. But what are we doing in preparation?
I don't think we're doing anything different per se, but I think we're really looking at how we use zero-party data. So zero-party data, first-party data, as you guys know, zero-party data is anything that you consent to, right? It's a survey, it is me opting out of an email, and then the first-party data is your birthday, name, all of that good stuff. So, as we kind of looking at, consumer sentiment, it's really knowing your consumer behavior. What are they willing to share? What are they not willing to share? What is their experience with the brand? And then that kind of leveling that out with sales and revenue trends, a lot of the other data that you have from your website, and marrying that with, a lot of just, you could even layer on additional data on top of that, right? So kind of really learning your customer behavior. That's, I think, what we're really leaning into as an organization in Q4 to just better optimize. So I think for us, strategy doesn't change, but just getting smart about how we use consumer data and, really being data driven.
Yeah, I also think on top of that, there's a lot of services out there and other kind of people we're partnering with that are working on gaining more data across the supply chain. So every part from where your manufacturer starts creating or starts building your products, and you can get live updates to see ahead of time or as soon as possible if there is going to be any delays or anything, and then you can kind of react ahead of that. So react in August instead of trying to react in October.
I mean, it's fascinating. You could take 5 cells in your Shopify data, and you could actually build on psychographics. You can start to layer on, and really get an understanding besides an email address, their purchase. You can see where they live, what they do, what do they like, what do they watch, what are they listening to, are they getting drunk, having sex, having a baby, and, all of this stuff during a recession. But I think, I really urge a lot of brands to use the data that you have, because as operators, we're only as good as listening to our customers, right? Being customer first, and that's why we're all here.
Yeah, I was just going to say for Q4, I think, Jenny, what you said before, we are launching a lot of new SKUs, but you have to focus on those core SKUs. And honestly, one of the things I wish we did earlier was at least have a demand planner. I mean, for a long time, too long, it was my co-founder and I, just like seeing which way the wind would take us. And having that level of rigor, especially now, and there are so many more tools out there than they were when we were a little bit of a younger business to really help you with inventory planning, so I cannot recommend that enough. And then secondly, when you are thinking about Q4, when you are thinking about bringing in inventory, especially if you're shipping from overseas, it's not just about the product anymore. Like, I'll give you an example. We just launched our V2, or our new high chair. When we thought about launching the product, it wasn't just about, how are we going to make this product better? It was because of what's going on in supply chain, was because of what's going on with freight, because of what's going on with outbound shipping costs, fuel surcharges. How can we drop the price of those things as well? And so one of the biggest improvements we've made, which we'll see a lot of fruits from specifically in Q4, when we expect freight to go up, is we actually reduced the box size of our best-selling product by 40%. So that's 40% more in a container, 30% less on outbound shipping, drayage is less. There's a whole kind of trickle-down effect, and that's something, as you are developing product, I would definitely take is much more important now than it was, when we launched the business in 2019.
Yeah, and like you said, everything is getting more and more competitive, and prices are going up across the board. So the more and more you can control your costs, that's something that we are trying to do for all of our customers. Every one of our customers, we've over 2,500 active customers, and being able to consult to them to make sure they understand every one of their expenses and how they can better manage them is something that we're always trying to kind of get in front of our founders.
For sure.
And then that sets you up for success, really, for the long haul. That's what we're on stage here to talk about. But so given everything that we've kind of talked about there and what you've experienced over the last 2 years operating these brands, is there any specific examples of times that you've triumphed, or maybe you haven't triumphed, or like specific challenges that you've experienced that you'd like to share or that is worth talking about?
Where to begin?
Yeah. There's a laundry list.
Top one.
I think our top triumph was when we realized we took 1% of the entire high chair market. That was a huge
Congrats.
milestone. That happened, I want to say, a little bit over a year ago. But the way we think about grabbing market share is you can grab 1% one year, then you can get up to 3% the next year. And I think once we realized we cracked that, it wasn't just about we're unseating the legacy players. It was like, okay, we actually are now a player. It was kind of like this validation for us internally, and I think how we outwardly marketed the brand. It wasn't about like, oh, we're this startup and like we're this challenger brand. It was, no, we're this next legacy baby brand that's going to be here for, 10, 15, 20, I have no idea how long. But I think that was like a big, big, big moment for us.
And was that something that you were aiming for, or was that a target of yours?
It was a target that my co-founder and I talked a lot about. We talked about it a little bit with the team, but because we're very focused on, as much as the high chair is our best-selling product, but on the entire kind of range of products, we've launched a ton. And so we're very much focused on, the kind of this idea of building a platform, really focused on getting repeat behavior up, which we think is like the key to obviously building this legacy brand.
I think for us, it is being in the process of launching 24 states wholesale right now, which for many brands, wholesale is kind of an obvious place to go. But for an indie liquor brand that's 3 years old, it's just never happened before. And for us, being able to launch D2C, again, we had this unique privilege to do so. We were able to collect customer data, which, as we've talked about, is incredibly important, but also historically impossible for liquor. There's always been a distributor and a retailer between them and the customer, so they never had that data. We were able to show that to distributors who, again, historically would never touch a brand that wasn't owned by a corporation or doing, $100 million a year in sales, which happens because you're owned by a corporation. And for us, we just had these proof points of we know where the customer lives, we have a heat map, we know where they like to eat, drink, and shop. We can literally engage them and send them to request us at accounts or go shop us at the accounts that you put us into. And essentially, you can just be a clearinghouse and collect money from us. That was a very compelling pitch to them that they hadn't really experienced before. And we wouldn't have been able to do that without this wild time in 2020 where a pandemic happened and there was all of this interest in digital consumption. That timeline moved up by 10 years, and there was this velocity that we couldn't have even anticipated. So it's one of these funny things where the curveballs can certainly impact us in a lot of negative ways that we have to work around, but in retrospect, you can actually be kind of grateful for these weird twists and turns in the system that you can benefit from as well.
And did you choose the brand name prior or post people having to drink in their house?
We chose it pre-pandemic. We made a bet that people, want to spend more time in their home and less out and about, and that just happened at an accelerated pace.
Well, that's some good branding you got there, thinking ahead of time. I certainly enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Jenny, do you have anything to add in the last few minutes here?
I think mine's a little bit more tactical. The biggest triumph since I've been at Day is we're finally able to get to a landed cost. So a lot of younger brands, when they start, a lot of the data in terms of cost and how you kind of allocate for COGS, it's all mixed up. There's truly no way to separate out, is this truly my COGS? How am I really calculating my gross profits, right? So if a lot of younger brands do not have a middleware, inventory management system, they might not even be at a 3PL. So when you start to separate out the data and you can get really accurate, it makes a huge difference. And for me, I think that was a triumph, being able to come into a brand, really figure out, hey, how are COGS getting calculated? How are our gross margins looking? Why is it looking that way? Is it off? Like, is our accounting off, right? Like, I think these are all the things that operators really go through. And I think for us, we're ready to scale. We have the foundation now. We feel good. We're, moving to a 3PL. We have visibility into all of our data. We know how we collect our data governance, all of the fun stuff. So that is something that I'm very proud of.
Okay, I think that loops us up very nicely about how to successfully scale your brand. You have to understand every piece of data that you can, understand your cost of goods, understand everything there is, cut back on every bit of costs that you can, pivot through diversity, don't fight against the different external forces that are coming against your brand. And I hope that the audience were able to get some value from speaking today. It was a pleasure being up here with you guys, and it's excited to see what you can do over the next few years.
Thank you.
Thank you.